good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Welcome to our VirtualQ Protect and Archive webinar. And today I am your host. My name is Diana Salazar. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for the Enterprise Backup and Archive space. And today's session is in regards to ransomware, tactics to protect your data from ransomware and cyber threats. And as you probably all are aware, ransomware, what ransomware is, and that it's a class of malware that prevents users from accessing their systems or data and demands a sum of money. You know, it's an open threat to the data center. We all know exactly what it is and how it works. We've been seeing it over the past few years. You know, the only difference that that there is what is the latest strand, what is going to hit next. So, you know, it doesn't matter what type of organization you are. You know, ransomware is attacking the most vulnerable networks, such as networks within the healthcare industry, networks in the government. But it's also attacking private enterprises and institutions, and so the impact is real. The impact is pretty hefty when we don't protect our data centers, and there's a lot that goes into that. But you know, it's more than this impact is more than twofold, I think. But just to give you an idea, these hackers, they can completely encrypt your data. And even if they return the decryption key, you may not be able to recover all of your data, and it could be irreversibly damaged. I was looking into some cybersecurity reports, and if you guys are familiar with the Ryuk ransomware, that ransomware is responsible for the large rise in ransomware payment costs, and it demands around $300,000 per incident on average, compared to somewhere below the 100K mark with other ransomware. And it's primarily being used in large companies and in pretty large organizations, and it's targeting your backup infrastructure. Why? Because you know, they want to get rid of you having the ability to recover quickly, so you can pay them. So all of that is pretty, you know, it's a threat that it's ongoing. And I just want to mention something about remote workforce and ransomware, because that's where we are all at right now, living through. There's a lot of the workforce that is still working from home. All those endpoints, they need to be secured. There's a lot more IP leaving your premises, and so intellectual property, financial data, personal data, all of those pieces of data need to be secured, and sometimes those pieces of data are coming out from these remote offices. So implementing security and protecting your data for continued operations, that's a necessity for business continuity. You know, with nearly 100% of the remote workforce, it's a monumental ask, but if done right, it can save millions of dollars. And just one tidbit here, remember current criminal behavior they're using, that they were using in the past, they're still using it, but they are no longer using mass campaigns. Instead, they are going for remote access, where, again, remote, where the remote desktop protocol was the most used entry point. And so, you know, we just want to make sure that you are aware of that. Surely you are, based on all this security reports that we are seeing. And just to show you some quick facts and figures, you know, from 2019 to 2020, criminals have shifted tactics a little bit. They began dropping payloads into more vulnerable networks, hospitals, schools, and government entities, where, again, you know, there was some vulnerability at some point in the network, and, you know, daily operations was interrupted and millions were paid. The rate of attacks is going up. Malicious hackers are now attacking computers and networks at a rate of about 1 every 39 seconds. And looking at a report, it looks like 81% of those people, those organizations that they surveyed, almost all of them were at least affected by one type of cyber attack in 2019. And so that's quite a bit, needless to say. Also, another point I want to bring up is the uneducated IT staff. You know, one of the barriers of establishing an effective defense is uneducated IT staff on ransomware. They were unable, in many cases, they were unable to identify and safeguard their networks. And there is just low security awareness among employees, and education is essential. And you know, and I understand that this is a big ask, because you have to continually defend your network from these various attacks, and it only takes the hacker one time to be successful. I mean, one successful attack. Meanwhile, you have to, you know, jump through hoops to make sure, along with your security teams and your network team and everybody in between, you have to make sure that you are, you know, defending your network and your organization. We mentioned this, criminals are no longer using mass campaigns. They're going for remote access. And then the FBI recommendation is, you know, keep an offline backup copy. That has a physical barrier. And in an attack, the chances are that the network will be compromised, that being your disk, your copy on disk, flash, whatever that may be in the cloud. And so you'll have the ability to pull your information, your data, from an air-gapped copy. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But I want to talk, just mention a couple of things about the information on this slide. You know, I didn't want to mention the name. I'm sure you know who this is, but this the city government was hit by ransomware last year, and the cost to recover from that attack was over $18 million. And it impacted vaccine productions. It impacted ATMs, airports, hospitals. And, you know, it just, the cyber criminal that was behind that attack only asked for about $80,000 in Bitcoin for them to get the decryption key, but they decided to you know, not pay. And not only that, but they decided to manually recover. And so I'm sure that $18 million was maybe at some point, maybe it was mentioned in the news or not, but they either paid some to the hacker and got some data back, but they had to manually recover because they weren't properly defending. And so we just want to highlight this because it could happen to anyone. And in fact, it's happened to many, many organizations already. Here we are in June in 2020, and there's already a tremendous amount of organizations that have been hit. So are we ready to defend the network, your network? Are you ready for the next attack? And so let's go through some figures so far in 2020, and for you to think about as you consider, you know, whether or not your data center is protected. So what to watch out for? You know, in 2020, things are not going to slow down. They're just going to keep, you know, hitting us with these ransomware attacks, and we got to watch out for personalized and targeted attacks. You know, current trends indicate that we got to watch for the current threats, but we got to watch for these personalized and targeted attacks that are designed to break down and bypass established safeguards. Ransomware tools that bypass behavior statistic or whitelisting-based solutions, they're going to be harder to detect. And Gartner is predicting that by 2020, 25% of cyber attacks will involve IoT devices. And, you know, criminals will ransom your data, and they will remain persistent and close to your network to destroy the backups where your local or in-cloud storage, you know, it doesn't matter where you're at, if it's connected to the network, and they'll interfere with your recovery efforts. So, bear that in mind. These criminals are targeting enterprises more than they're targeting consumers. Why? Well, simple fact that there's more money to be made. Maybe you're interested more in, enterprises are interested more in the reputation and the data, companies' jewels. So, they're shifting into attacking the data centers a lot more, and definitely concentrating on reaching your backup. And so experts are calling for modernization of the infrastructure and an offline copy that could be your best line of defense, your best last line of defense. And that being said, it's really a matter whether, is tape right for you? And we can look at that a little bit further. But I wanted to think about, if you get hit with ransomware, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to pay? Are you not going to pay? This is a quick graph of the percentage of victimized organizations that have paid ransom, and we can see that it's risen considerably this year. It actually was 38.7% that paid ransom last year, and it went up to 45% this year. And so, when you start asking the question, what is more financially right for you? Is it going to make sense to just pay the ransom? Is it going to, make sense to be well prepared in advance and have those additional copies? And we'll talk a little bit about the 3211 backup rule. It's a rule that is old as time, but I do want to mention it because it has proven to be very effective for a lot of our customers. So let's look at this. Let's look at a scenario. You get hit with ransomware and you have three options. You pay the ransom, and what goes through, the analysis as you go through that analysis, what ends up, popping into your head as far as, is it more cost effective to pay the ransom? Is it going to allow me the time to just pay it and start recovering and rebuilding my operations faster? I get to think about, future attacks and how to put safeguards in place to make sure it doesn't occur again. Those are the kind of questions that, organizations are asking. Are you not going to pay the ransom? Are you going to begin the long process of recovering manually like that other organization, that city government? It might take longer to decrypt that stolen data and may be more expensive. Or, like I said earlier, are you going to be well prepared and have those three copies, whether you choose disk, the cloud, and an offline copy on tape? It's offline, it's air-gapped, and there's no way that ransomware can reach that copy, unless it's connected to the network. But if it's not, then it's, unless it goes airborne, it's a different story. But so the best case scenario would be to not pay the ransom and to be able to recover from your copy, hopefully on disk, but if not, you have your insurance on tape. Because once the data is written, it cannot be erased. That's there's immutability in that. So if it's offline media, the inherent security features keeps data inaccessible to intruders of your network. And then you have assurance that you have a clean offline copy, and you can recover in a short amount of time, maybe not as quick as disk, but certainly you have the assurance that you will be able to recover very quickly. Now, your definition of the RPO and RTO will determine whether or not tape can meet that criteria. So think about those scenarios and how you think that you would respond, because unintentionally what's happening in the industry and the market in general is that when organizations pay those, that ransom, the unintended effect is that we are creating that demand for criminal activity. We think it's important to safeguard our networks. We think it's important to protect our data. Therefore, they are going to attack that area. They're going to find a vulnerable spot, and they're going to try to steal that data. And when we end up paying it, that ransom, then we are funding the development of more ransomware strands and hacker technology, and it just triggers a never-ending cycle. And so because cost is a factor when you are deciding whether or not to pay for ransomware, you know, it's just important to consider a very cost-effective choice for you, that you do have that offline copy. Yes, among them is disk. Disk is wonderful. Tape and cloud, you have all these options. And tape has been around for a long time, but the use case has changed a little bit. And I mentioned earlier this 3211 backup rule, which essentially is 3 copies of your data, 2 forms of media, 1 offsite and 1 offline, right? And here's an image that you can see where it's just the nature of the tape library. It is all those cartridges that you see there. They are either they're not connected to the network, they're archived, they're for long-term storage, and then you can connect it back into the network once it goes into the drive slot. But the key to thwarting ransomware is maintaining really a copy of that data in a completely inaccessible media type from any network, and that's something that we call air-gapped, you know, and it's still the most cost-effective and secure way to hold your backup. The security and the protection against ransomware and other malware is evident that with tape, it's just simple. It's air-gapped and it's completely offline, as you can see there. So, you know, it's just hard to bargain and to have to be right all the time. It's unfortunate where we're at with this, and, you know, IT professionals, you're like bargaining all the time because you have to be successful every single time. You know, and like I mentioned earlier, hackers only need to be successful one time before, you know, they can, as they try to get into your network. So think about the new use case for tape. And I just briefly want to mention that, you know, the traditional use of tape may be through your head. You're wondering, well, you know, tape, it's old, it's, you know, ancient, whatever. You know, it's been proven time and time again that using tape for ransomware protection is really going to help you sleep better at night. The old use case for tape is, you know, users were running applications that were running on servers, backup applications run on the servers, and then they copy a primary, they'd copy their primary data to disk, and then they dedupe it either with the software or the hardware appliance, and then they would replicate to keep it offsite and then send it off to tape, and they send it off to tape for offsite and long-term retention and DR. But, you know, we heard this thing about tape, and that tape handling was a pain. And then restoring data from tapes at IRMO was pretty difficult, especially when you were trying to recover and trying to meet your RPO and your RTO. And so we heard you. And what Quantum has done, and I'll show you a little bit more after this slide, but we believe that the new use case for tape is really for an offline copy. You know, now the daily backups are sent to disk. It's all about offline and not offsite. You know, when you consider tape, those dedupe appliances can replicate between data centers for your DR protection and quick recovery. And then those regular backups can be sent off to tape. And we believe that OnPrem Tape is the best option to protect from ransomware and recover from ransomware, really. And I'll show you why the OnPrem tapes in the library can help you recover pretty quick. Now, you can still send your copy to the cloud. You can still use those DR points. We're not saying replace any of those, but for ransomware protection, we think that OnPrem Tape can be a lifesaver because those copies in the cloud can remain in the cloud, but once you start pulling from there, those egress charges start adding up. So that's not, you know, more costs that you need to add. You want to make sure you avoid additional charges at all costs. So cloud copy or DX5 replication, that's your off-site for DR purposes, and then your long-term copy and ransomware recoverable copy should go on-prem tape. But the beauty of this is that the features we've added on to the Scalar tape library is that you don't need to handle tapes anymore. And why is that? We are offering we added actually this feature. It's called the Quantum Active Vault for ransomware protection. And essentially, it's available on all Quantum Scalar type libraries. It is an upgrade, and it's built on the secured offline nature of the library because it creates a total offline vault within the library itself, creating a ransomware secure area. Now, we all know that, tape library partitions were invented a long time ago, and, they were meant to be shared by many applications in the library. But these partitions normally contain dedicated data slots and cartridges and tape drives and import-export slots, and they all share the same role. Well, the Scalar libraries, the active vault in the Scalar library are now, it's now managed by the library itself, okay? So before this in Scalar libraries, these partitions were application managed partitions, right? So now the backup application, it backs up the data to the tape, depending on your RPO, and then it moves within the tape cartridges and everything, and it holds the data, right? So this concept of the partitions has gone beyond just application sharing, and these Scalar libraries can also contain library managed partitions, which consist of unlicensed slots. They are completely invisible to the external applications, and they are used to enable these special features. One type of what I'm talking about here is, active vault. The tape resides on the shelf in the vault. There's no network connectivity. Tapes can only be retrieved from the vault using the administrator command. And through that administrator command, that admin uses the policy to export tapes to secure in-library vault. So it provides a secured storage location within the library that is inaccessible, and not even accidentally by, accessible by the application. They are configured by the tape library administrator, and it can be any size that you require. And it's even it cannot even be exposed accidentally. So only the admin can make changes to the AV partitions. This can be integrated with Microsoft Active Directory. All that happens is these tapes are exported by the backup application, and the tape library does everything else, so the robot does everything else. It moves the tapes into the correct AV partition. So this is a really cool feature. You don't have to handle any more tapes. And so in addition to that, what Quantum has done is we wanted to make it very, very simple for you to secure that offline backup copy with our tape libraries. And so we've created these ransomware protection packs, and they come in small, medium, or large configurations, a predetermined capacity and system configuration. It comes bundled with support and all the security features that you will need to ensure you have that ransomware protection. And so tape is already secure because of its nature, that it's just stored offline, but we go and take it a step further by creating these packages and these additional software features, which include the Active Vault software license, the Scalar Key Manager, servers and associated tape drive licenses, and the advanced reporting software license. So the small, medium, and large predetermined configuration, they range from 600 terabytes to 2.4 petabytes. In a small, it's a Scalar i3, if you're familiar with that, 50 total slots. You can use them however you want, and all the way to 200 slots. And it comes with the media that you need and the drive, 1, 3, or 6 drives. Now, these can be configured differently if you so wish. If the need is a little bit different, you can request a different configuration, absolutely. If you are already the owner of a Scalar tape library, then and you want to upgrade to a more secured and start leveraging the Active Vault software, then there is a ransomware protection pack software add-on. And so that with that package, what you basically get is what you see there, the 3 licenses. And all you have to do is contact your trusted advisor and ask them for this upgrade, and you will get it. There's nothing to ship, nothing to change. It's just a license, and you can begin leveraging a pretty awesome tool that allows you to keep your tapes and your data on-prem so that you can avoid egress charges from the cloud, or if your disk connected to the network gets impacted by cyber attack or ransomware, it's, specifically geared towards that type of a solution so that you can avoid additional costs wherever possible. So take a look at those when you do get a chance. We can go over them in more detail, I'm sure, if you would like some more information. So the question is, where do we go from here? The best line of defense against ransomware is not one single solution. It is a combination of various tools that will best protect your backup and your archive. It's between the security software that you're using, it's the backup application, it's the hardware on the back end, and it's all different types of tools that you're going to need in order to securely protect that data. And when I mentioned earlier about that 3-2-1-1 rule, if you're not familiar with it, the 3 is 3 copies, the 2 stands for 2 different media types, the 1 is for 1 copy off-site, and the last one is for 1 copy offline. And where we see tape these days fitting into the 3-2-1-1 rule is that it should be the offline copy, your best last line of defense copy. That's where that copy needs to go. And on-prem tape seems to be the most cost-effective solution out there. Now, you have to have effective DR solutions. It's essential. And we have seen many customers come and say, if it wasn't for this offline copy, I would have lost my data completely. And so not only is it sound, but it is recommended by the FBI because they've seen so many cases where an offline copy would have saved the organization. So forensic tools, along with the best practice backup of 3-2-1-1, keep your air-gapped copy on-prem. You can also keep it in a type of cold storage with a cloud provider. But if you need to recover, it's going to be additional charges. So if you do deploy an offline strategy, question to ask is, does that require you to train your people to manage tape? It's not surprising that many new IT professionals don't know the technology, and it's understandable. But now with ransomware hitting so much, it's taken a turn, and there's a resurgence of the need for tape. And so this is about using various tools. Keep in mind, it's, what is it going to entail to train your people? So a thorough cost analysis can help determine the best course of action for you and your organization. Think about where you have gaps and in your cyber threat defenses relative to, what others are doing. There's a lot of security reports out there. Pick your favorite provider and look through that information. There's a lot of good details that we can all learn from, and the more we all, look into that, and as organizations decide that, maybe paying ransomware is not the best deal here. Maybe, I don't know that we're ever going to stop this ransomware activity and the amount of attacks, but I think the rate can certainly go down if more organizations, stop being low-hanging fruit and, we would probably be targeted a lot less because, we have that air-gapped copy kept on OnPrem tape or some sort of, whether you keep your tape in a different location. But, I just wanted to make sure that we highlighted some of these stats, these solutions. We hope to help IT decision makers and influencers gain a better understanding of the tactics that are being used and how to best defend your organization. You have perceptions and concerns and priorities, and I'm sure that all of that is not far off from what your peers are talking about. So, leverage the data that is available, analyze it, and find the right solution. And I hope that this session that we had together kind of highlighted some of what the information that is really crucial for you to think about as you start looking at where the gaps are and the role that tape can play within your organization. So just in summary, these attacks, they may not be ending anytime soon, but we can certainly reduce the rate at the rate that they are coming. It doesn't matter if you're a small organization, if you're a medium-sized, or you're a large enterprise. Their goal is to attack your backup infrastructure. They'll try to hit your network, and they'll try to get your backup copy. So if you keep those copies all connected to the network, eventually they might find its way there. And so that's why OnPrem Tape can be the best solution and your best last line of defense. With that, I will move into questions. And let me look at the panel here real quick, see if there's any questions. Okay, there's one that keeps coming up here. Give me a second. And it came up yesterday as well. How can you ensure a compromised copy is not sent to tape for archive? Well, we have to work with a security software. We have to work with all the forensic tools that are available within your environment. I wish I could say the answer is yes. We can guarantee that data that was sent to tape is not compromised. But the fact of the matter is that we have to work with all the forensic tools that you have available, and we work together to make sure that those copies and that, any activity that is unusual is caught before that copy is sent to tape. And so, we rely, as they rely, those other tools rely on that, having that copy. The fact is that the data that is in it, it is as good as the data that is written into it. So none of our software features have the ability to scan for viruses, but your backup application does, and your security software does, and you've got, 2 gates there to go through and more, depending on what kind of software you're using. But we believe that backups or copies to tape should be sent out more often to be air-gapped, and of course that'll depend on what your RPO and your RTOs and your tolerance threshold is. But essentially, our tape libraries really don't have an idea that the data is infected. So if the security software misses the data is going to be bad. So that's why we highly encourage for more copies be sent to be air-gapped in a OnPrem tape library, and that we will work in conjunction with all the other security apps that you employ. But your security software should be able to detect, unusual activity before it's sent. So hopefully that answers the question. It may not be the best answer, but that's where we are today. And so there was like 3 or 4 questions embedded into one, so hopefully I answered them all in that long response. So does that happen, and how do you protect or restore? How much data remains at risk? All of that probably was answered within that same response. So with that, I wanted to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining me for this session. on tactics to protect your data from ransomware and cyber threats. I hope that I was able to share tidbits of information that could be useful for you as you think about your, your defenses and the gaps within your network. And with that, thank you so much.